He thought marrying her would make him rich. He never imagined this night. The night love and greed would collide in flames. The night everything he believed about himself would burn to ashes. This is the story of a man who made a deal with a devil dressed in designer suits, and a woman the world called ugly who saved his life in ways he never expected. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. The night air smelled like gasoline and fear. Marcus knelt on the wet asphalt, his hands trembling as flames consumed the black limousine behind him. Rain mixed with blood on his knuckles. Sirens screamed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. Beside him stood Elena, the woman he'd married 3 months ago for money, her scarred face illuminated by the fire's glow, tears streaming down her cheeks. She whispered through broken sobs, "They'll find us, Marcus. My father will never forgive this." He looked into her eyes, those same eyes he'd once avoided, and realized something terrifying. 6 months before that burning limousine, Marcus Bennett was just another struggling mechanic in Phoenix, 28 years old with grease under his fingernails and dreams dying slowly in a neighborhood where hope went to rust. He worked 14-hour shifts at Henderson's Auto Repair, a cramped garage that smelled like motor oil and broken promises. His hands were calloused, his back ached constantly, and every paycheck disappeared before it arrived. Rent was 3 months overdue. The electricity had been shut off twice that year. But none of that mattered as much as his mother's medicine bills, prescriptions that cost more than he made in a week, for a heart condition that was slowly stealing her away from him. He'd watch her sleep in their small apartment, her breathing shallow and labored. And he'd whisper the same prayer every night. "One day, Mom. One day I'll make enough to move us out of this place." But God seemed busy with other people's prayers. Life kept knocking him down, harder each time. Until the day a silver Mercedes pulled up outside the garage, so out of place it might as well have been a spaceship. A man in a 3-piece suit stepped out, shoes so polished they reflected the afternoon sun. His name was Mr. Stevens, assistant to billionaire industrialist Vincent Harrington. And he had an offer that sounded like a fever dream. "Marry my employer's daughter," Mr. Stevens said, his voice smooth as expensive whiskey. "Complete the marriage, stay for 1 year, and you'll be compensated beyond your wildest imagination." Marcus laughed at first, thought it was some kind of prank. But Mr. Stevens slid an envelope across the workbench. Inside was a check for $50,000, just for agreeing to meet her. "Why?" Marcus asked, his throat tight. "Why me?" Mr. Stevens's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Because you need money, Mr. Bennett. And because you're nobody. No connections, no family wealth, no questions asked." That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. The whispers had already started spreading through the neighborhood like wildfire. "They say she's disfigured," people murmured over corner store counters and bus stop benches. "They say her face was burned in some accident. They say no man ever stays, that her father pays them to leave quietly." His mother, weak but wise, touched his hand with trembling fingers. "Be careful, baby. Some doors, once you walk through them, they lock behind you." But when the eviction notice arrived the next morning, when the pharmacy called saying they couldn't extend credit anymore, Marcus made his choice. He told himself it was just a deal, just business, just 1 year of his life in exchange for his mother's survival. He never imagined it would be destiny wearing a mask. If you're feeling this story, hit that like button. We want to know you're with us on this journey. The ceremony took place on a cold October evening in the Harrington family's private estate, a mansion that looked like it had been carved from ice and old money. No guests, no music, no celebration. Just a judge, Mr. Stevens standing stone-faced in the corner, and guards positioned by every door like they were protecting a crime scene instead of witnessing a wedding. Marcus stood at the altar in a rented suit that didn't quite fit, his heart hammering against his ribs. When Elena walked down the aisle, her face hidden behind a thick lace veil, he noticed her hands first. They were shaking, trembling so violently he could see it from across the room. The judge spoke words Marcus didn't hear, his mind racing with doubt and desperate justification. When it came time to lift the veil, Marcus hesitated. Elena did it herself slowly, and met his eyes with a look of such profound sadness it knocked the air from his lungs. Her face bore scars that ran down the left side, puckered skin that spoke of terrible heat and terrible pain. But what struck him wasn't the scars. It was her eyes, deep brown and filled with the kind of exhaustion that comes from years of being looked at but never seen. Desired for your father's money, but never for yourself. Marcus forced a smile. The kind you wear when you're lying to yourself and everyone else. Elena didn't smile back. She just nodded once, a small gesture that said she understood exactly what this was, a transaction, a performance, a marriage with no heart beating inside it. Her father, Vincent Harrington, watched from the front row, his expression carved from granite. 53 years old, silver-haired, with eyes like frozen lakes that revealed nothing. He didn't clap when the judge pronounced them married. He simply stood, buttoned his jacket, and walked out without a word. That night, they drove to the Harrington mansion in separate cars. The estate sprawled across 20 acres of manicured lawns and sculpted hedges, a monument to wealth that felt more like a mausoleum than a home. Inside, the silence was suffocating. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, priceless art on walls that seemed to stretch up forever, but no warmth, no life, no sound except their footsteps echoing through empty halls. Elena showed him to his room, a guest suite larger than his entire apartment, and paused at the door. "You don't have to pretend when we're alone," she said quietly. "I know why you're here. I've always known." Then she walked away before he could respond, her footsteps fading into the vast emptiness of the house. Would you have taken the deal? Comment below and let us know what you would have done in Marcus's position. The first week was like living in a beautiful prison. Marcus had his own wing, his own staff, access to everything except the truth. He sent money to his mother, paid off debts that had crushed him for years, and tried to convince himself he'd made the right choice. But the mansion had secrets that whispered in the dark. Lights flickered in hallways when no one was there. Doors opened on their own, revealing rooms that smelled like old smoke and older grief. At night, he'd hear Elena talking in her sleep, her voice drifting through the walls. "Don't let them in," she'd murmur over and over. "They're coming back." On the 8th night, Marcus found a locked door at the end of the east wing. Heavy oak with a name carved deep into the wood like a warning or a prayer. Rebecca. He tried the handle but it wouldn't budge. When he asked the housekeeper about it the next morning, she went pale and shook her head. "Mr. Harrington doesn't allow questions about that room," she whispered. "If you're smart, you'll forget you saw it." But Marcus wasn't good at forgetting. That same night, around 2 in the morning, the sound of shattering glass exploded through the mansion. Marcus bolted upright as bullets ripped through the bedroom windows, spraying glass across the floor like deadly rain. He threw himself to the ground as armed men in black tactical gear stormed through the hallways, their radios crackling with urgent commands. "They've found her. Move her now." Instinct took over. Marcus ran toward Elena's room and found her frozen by the window, eyes wide with terror. He grabbed her hand and pulled her down just as another round of gunfire tore through the curtains. Vincent Harrington's security team flooded the house, returning fire, shouting coordinates into their earpieces. Within minutes it was over, the attackers retreating into the night, but the message was clear. Someone wanted Elena dead, and they knew exactly where to find her. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, because this story is about to take a turn you won't see coming. The next morning, Marcus confronted Elena in the library, adrenaline still burning through his veins. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded. "Who were those people? Why are they trying to kill you?" Elena sat in a leather chair by the window, sunlight catching the scars on her face, making them look like rivers carved by old tears. For a long moment she said nothing, just stared out at the gardens her father paid people to keep perfect. Then she spoke, and her voice cracked under the weight of years of silence. "My scars aren't from birth, Marcus. They're from the fire my father caused to hide his crimes. He wanted the world to believe I was unworthy of love, that I was damaged, so no one would ever look too closely at our family." She told him everything. About her mother, Rebecca, a gentle woman who'd discovered evidence of Vincent Harrington's illegal weapons deals, his involvement with international criminals who funneled money through his factories. Rebecca had threatened to go to the authorities, to expose everything. So Vincent set their summer home on fire with Rebecca and 8-year-old Elena inside, making it look like an electrical accident. Rebecca died trying to shield her daughter from the flames. Elena survived, but barely, her face and arms scarred forever. Vincent told the world his daughter was too traumatized, too disfigured to appear in public, and locked her away in the mansion like a secret too dangerous to speak. "He's been hiding me for 20 years, Elena whispered, tears finally breaking free. Marrying me off to someone with no power, no connections, was supposed to legitimize his image, make him look like a caring father. But the people he's betrayed, they know I have evidence hidden somewhere, files my mother gave me before she died. They want me dead, and my father," her voice broke completely. "My father wants the same thing. As long as I'm alive, I'm a threat to his empire." Marcus felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. He'd walked into this marriage thinking it was about money, a simple transaction. But he'd stepped into a war that had been raging for 2 decades, and now he was a target too. That night, hidden in the garage workshop that reminded him of better days, Marcus made a decision. He could run, take the money he'd already earned and disappear. Or he could stay and help the woman everyone had given up on, including herself. He thought about his mother, about the prayers she'd whispered over him his whole life, about being the kind of man who didn't turn his back when things got hard. He chose to stay. Over the next few weeks, something shifted between them. Marcus started teaching Elena small acts of rebellion, taking her outside the mansion gates for the first time in years. They'd drive to hole-in-the-wall diners at midnight, eating cheap burgers while she laughed at his stories about impossible car repairs and difficult customers. She watched him work on engines in the estate's garage, her eyes lighting up when his hands moved with practiced confidence through machinery. "You look happy when your hands are dirty," she said one afternoon, a small smile breaking through. "Like you're exactly where you're supposed to be." He realized she was right. And he realized something else too. He was falling in love with her, not despite her scars but because of everything those scars represented: survival, strength, refusing to disappear even when the world wanted you gone. Drop a comment right now and tell us, would you risk everything for someone you barely knew? We really want to hear your thoughts. It happened on a Tuesday night, 3 months after the wedding. Marcus was walking past Vincent Harrington's study when he heard voices, low and urgent. He pressed himself against the wall and listened to Mr. Stevens on the phone, his words ice-cold and precise. "Once the marriage is confirmed legally, get rid of them both. Stage it as a car accident. The insurance will cover it, and I'll finally be free of this liability. Yes, both of them. The mechanic has served his purpose." Marcus's blood turned to ice. He'd never been meant to survive this. He was just another loose end to be tied off and buried. He found Elena in her room and told her everything, watching her face crumble as the last piece of her father's betrayal fell into place. "We have to leave," Marcus said urgently. "Right now, tonight." Elena's hands were shaking again, but this time with anger instead of fear. "The evidence," she whispered. "The files my mother gave me. They're in Rebecca's room. If we leave without them, he wins. He gets away with everything." They moved through the mansion like ghosts, Elena producing a key she'd hidden for 12 years, opening the door to her mother's sealed room. Inside, preserved like a shrine, were boxes of documents, financial records, emails, photographs, everything needed to destroy Vincent Harrington's empire and put him behind bars for the rest of his life. They loaded everything into a car just as security lights flooded the grounds. Vincent had discovered they knew. Armed men poured out of the mansion, weapons drawn, radios crackling with orders to stop them at any cost. Marcus floored the accelerator, tires screaming as bullets shattered the rear window. They made it to the main gate, but the limousine's tire blew, sending them spinning off the road. The vehicle flipped, crashed, and burst into flames. That's where the story began, on that rain-soaked road with fire and sirens and the weight of impossible choices. But Elena didn't run. Instead, she stood up, evidence clutched in her burned hands, and faced her father as his men surrounded them. "You can destroy your money, father," she said, voice steady despite the tears. "You can burn your empire to the ground. But you can't destroy my soul. Not anymore." In that moment, police cars arrived, real ones this time. Federal agents Elena had contacted days earlier through encrypted channels. The files were handed over. Vincent Harrington was arrested on 17 charges including murder, arms trafficking, and attempted homicide. As they loaded him into the squad car, he looked at his daughter one last time. And Elena looked back without flinching. Marcus stood beside her, his hand finding hers, holding tight as the man who'd tried to erase them both was finally erased from their lives. 6 months later, on a warm spring morning in a small town 300 miles from Phoenix, Marcus Bennett opened the doors to Bennett's Auto Care, a modest garage that smelled like fresh paint and new beginnings. Elena stood beside him, wearing coveralls and a smile that transformed her entire face. They'd used the reward money from the federal case to start over somewhere quiet, somewhere safe, somewhere nobody knew their names or their history. The garage became more than a business. Elena started a foundation for children with burn scars, offering free counseling and medical consultations, turning her pain into purpose. Marcus worked on cars and taught disadvantaged kids mechanical skills, giving them the same chance he'd once needed. His mother moved in with them, her health improving in the clean air and peace. She'd hold Elena's hand during dinner and say, "I prayed for a miracle for my son. I never imagined it would look like you." On Sunday evenings, they'd sit on the porch and watch the sunset paint the sky in colors that looked like hope and healing. Elena would lean her scarred cheek against Marcus's shoulder, and he'd kiss the top of her head, marveling at how far they'd traveled from that cold wedding ceremony to this warm, ordinary life that felt like everything. "Do you regret it?" Elena asked him once. "Marrying me?" Marcus thought about the fear, the bullets, the fire, the night he thought they'd both die on that road. Then he looked at her, really looked at her, saw the woman who'd saved him from becoming the kind of man who'd sell his soul for money and never buy it back. "I regret that it took me so long to see you," he said quietly. "But I don't regret a single moment since." Because he'd learned what the world spends billions trying to forget. True wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or mansions or the things you own. It's measured in the people who see you at your worst and choose to stay. It's measured in scars that tell stories of survival. It's measured in love that refuses to be bought or sold or traded for anything else. He'd married for money and found something infinitely more valuable. He'd found himself. And she, the woman the world had called ugly and hidden away like shame, had found her voice, her power, her freedom. Together, they'd built something no fire could ever burn. A life worth living, on their own terms, with their own hands, in a world that finally felt like home. Sometimes the blessings we pray for come disguised as broken people who teach us how to be whole. Sometimes the love we need arrives wearing scars and carrying secrets, asking only that we be brave enough to stay when everything screams run. What would you have done if you were Marcus, standing at that crossroads between greed and grace? Would you have taken the money and disappeared? Or would you have chosen the harder path? The one that leads through fire to something real? Comment below because your words might inspire someone tonight who's standing at their own crossroads, wondering if love is worth the risk. And if this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that beauty and worth have nothing to do with what the world sees and everything to do with what the soul carries, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because in a world that measures everything by appearance and price tags, we need more stories about people who chose connection over comfort, about courage that looks like staying when leaving would be easier, about love that sees past the surface to the truth underneath. Thank you for watching, for listening, for being part of this community where stories matter and every voice counts. Subscribe so you never miss the next one, because we're just getting started, and the best stories, the ones that change how we see the world, are still to come. Until next time, remember this: the most powerful miracle isn't the one that changes your circumstances. It's the one that changes your heart.